Oh, the sunblock is like going into my eyeballs and it's burning. What's cooking, everybody? Dave Mays here with Kinotika, and today we're talking about the lens that I've been using for the last month now, the new Panasonic 10-25mm f1.7 Micro Four Thirds epic lens goodness. Lindsay lens boys. Let's go. So I'm going to break this review into two kind of categories. Number one, the way that I use it, and number two, the way that this lens is probably made to be used, not the way I'm using it. I'm using it on an Olympus EM1 Mkii, which is not a very pro video camera, but it does all the things that I love, all the things that I need. So for me, it's the perfect combination, and that's what I can really speak to because this is the setup I've been using mostly for the last month now. I love this lens combo. This is literally a dream setup for me as a content creator. But what this lens is really made for was for the GH5. So I'm going to be doing some comparisons with the GH5 and the Olympus EM1 Mkii. But just so you guys know, even though Panasonic makes this lens, it does work beautifully on the Olympus bodies. Now I got my first hands-on with this lens at Cinegear 2019. Panasonic had it on display and I really loved using it with the GH5. First off, you have a clickless aperture ring on the front here, and unfortunately this does not work on the Olympus bodies. It only works on the Panasonic bodies. But it's great if you're a video shooter, having the ability to just quickly change your aperture when you need that exposure change is great, and it works perfectly on the GH5, of course. Now there is no IS built into this lens, but most of the Micro Four Thirds cameras that you're going to be using this with have some sort of IBIS built in. In my case, the Olympus EM1 Mkii has the best IBIS I've ever used on any camera ever. And obviously the Panasonic has the same kind of setup as well. When you buy this lens, you're gonna be spending over $1,700 for it. So it's definitely no bargain lens. And honestly, a lot of people have been comparing this to the Sigma 18-35 f1.8 with a speed booster, which comes in at a cheaper price point than this lens. This lens is lighter. It's got some benefits again, like the clickless aperture. And if you really only care about that low light aperture look and the extra depth of field, then the Sigma with the speed booster is actually going to be a better option. It's better in low light, and if you're just going to use manual focus anyways on the GH5 because the autofocus sucks, well then it's kind of a better option overall, honestly. My friend Gerald Undone did an entire video comparing this lens to the Sigma 18-35 in that kind of speed booster combo, and his conclusions were basically that the Sigma was a better deal overall. However, he doesn't have the perspective I have coming from an Olympus camera body using this lens with this camera, and he didn't speak to that at all. He didn't talk about the autofocus performance with this camera, which is fabulous. Again, I've talked a lot about the Olympus EM1 Mkii. It's the only camera I shoot on these days, although right now I am shooting on the Canon M50 because I've got all these cameras that I'm holding and talking about. But the EM1 Mkii really is a solid video performer now with the new firmware update. For around $1,100, I bought this camera used off of B&H. You can maybe even get a better deal off eBay. And with that new V3 firmware, I now have fully reliable autofocus. I used this camera solely as my main camera with this lens solely as the only lens, completely handheld, to do an entire music video that I have on my personal channel. I'll link that in the description below and the icon above. It's a parody of Old Town Road and it was a lot of fun to make. I did the video with my friends Justine and Sarah Dici, and we put the thing together really quick. I shot everything in log on the Olympus EM1 Mkii with this lens, and I thought it was solid. This lens was designed in partnership with Leica, so it's got that beautiful design and ruggedness that you've seen with other Leica Panasonic lenses. I really love how this thing zooms in and out, and this little clicky ring here actually is how you can change from manual focus to autofocus, which I find extremely helpful. Now with this clutch, it comes in clutch, and we have full linear control, which means when I go here, I know it's at its minimum focus range, and when I go here, I know it's at its maximum infinity range, and everything in between is marked and it's all accurate. It's not like if I spin it faster, it'll go quicker to infinity. It's always at the stopping point right here, it's at infinity, and at the stopping point here, I know it's at the closest range. Now this lens on a Micro Four Thirds body is a 20 to 50 millimeter focal range, which I think is the perfect focal range for me, at least. When I'm shooting videos to camera like what I'm doing right now, I need a somewhat wide angle aesthetic to basically be able to reach the camera, control it, and then obviously have me in the frame. If it's too tight, Like right here, I zoomed into 35mm, which is a 50mm on a crop sensor like the M50. It's just a little too close. So I want to have something that's sort of wide but not fisheye, because fisheye just looks bad. So right here is kind of the best focal range in my opinion. This is roughly 24mm, 23mm. I found that the standard 12 to 35 kit lens for this camera is not wide enough, because even though 12mm is 24mm with the crop sensor, I found it's just not wide enough because of the mode that I use. I use mode 1, which adds a slight electronic stabilization to the image, which crops in slightly, so it actually turns it into like a 28 or a 30mm, which makes it just a little too tight for me. This 10mm is the perfect sweet spot for me. All the way zoomed out to 10mm, even with my electronic stabilization mode turned on and that slight crop, I find it to be the perfect focal length for 2 camera pieces. And if I do want a little bit extra wide angle, I just turn that crop off with this button that I've triggered to turn that electronic stabilization mode on and off. And when I turn it off, it makes the image a little bit wider if I actually need it. And if I'm just shooting on a tripod, it doesn't matter. This lens is fully weather sealed all the way through, the whole thing. This is a 77mm filter thread on here. So if you have filters, just keep that in mind. I have all 77mm filters, so that's perfect. So even though I am an anomaly with this lens, using it on an Olympus body, it really does feel at home on the GH5. Of course, we get the full clickless aperture control ring, which is super nice. And if you're a video shooter, you're gonna love this. Also, of course, if you're shooting a hybrid of both video and stills, this is a better option than the Sigma, because you're going to get much better autofocus tracking, much better autofocus performance with this lens on any Panasonic body, of course, because, well, it's an actual native Micro Four Thirds lens and you're not using a dumb adapter like the Metabones. For stills, this lens is great. I've taken a lot of great pictures of my family using this lens. I love the bokeh, I love the sharpness. It's a great lens. It's big, it's not something you want to kind of carry around with you everywhere you go, but for a professional, I think it's totally doable. And even though it does look large, it's very lightweight for what the size is. I mean, it's surprisingly light. I can't speak too much to the image quality for stills because I'm just not a photographer, but I will say that the images I have taken with it are fabulous. And if you want a 1 camera and 1 lens setup, it's really amazing. Overall, this setup right here, the Olympus EM1 Mkii with the 10-25 is the perfect setup for me. I've had a lot of people ask me about this setup as I've been walking around with it at events. I took this to the Panasonic S1H event and used it. It's perfect. It's kind of everything that I've needed. I want the IBIS, I want a flip screen, I want good 4K, I want a good zoom range on 1 lens, I want a fast aperture at f1.7, I want something that's weather sealed, something that's good for photos, something that has good color, great bokeh. I mean, I love Leica, everything that they do. So the only thing I'm missing out on the Olympus is this nice clickless aperture ring. I really wish that they would enable that. I don't think that's ever gonna happen. They've never done it with any of the other Leica lenses that Panasonic's made in the past. Not a huge deal. I just use this little scroll thing here and it works fine on my aperture. But yeah, this one setup right here is everything that I need to create amazing content, to take great stills, great imagery. I can't wait for an EM1 Mark III to come out to hopefully have even more features, like 4K 60 would be nice. This camera doesn't have that, unfortunately. But what do you guys think of this lens? Do you want to buy one? Is it worth the money to get this expensive wide angle to normal angle zoom lens? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you are considering buying this lens, please consider using my affiliate links in the description below. It really helps out the channel and I really appreciate you clicking on those links. If you've watched all the way to the end of this video, then you must be a fan of Kinotika. I want to just give you a little update on what's going on with the channel. I haven't been as consistent as I would like to be and I want to change that, but in order to change that, I'm gonna have to potentially do a little bit less work on the editing side. My wife is due October 7th. So when that happens, I'm probably gonna have to not work as much, obviously. I will still be doing consistent videos and I've talked to my wife about it and she's cool with it and we have a bunch of help. So everything should be fine overall, but so I might have to take a break for a while as I'm dealing with having a newborn and a 2-year-old, by the way. So I'll have a newborn and a 2-year-old. So if you guys know about that dad life, let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, I've been enjoying this lens so much. I've been enjoying making videos so much on Kinotika. So I want to just thank you guys for being here, for watching this stuff, for subscribing. We're almost at 70,000 subs. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. I want to hit that 70,000 maybe that'd be a great baby gift. So thanks again for watching, and see you next time.